This is from Ryan Anderson, who goes, I always have to wonder how both of you got into wrestling journalism. Do you have to have connections to become one? I don't even know how you got started, Brian. How'd you get started?
I did, back when we did the backyard wrestling, there was this guy that was actually financing us for a while, and he gave me money to do a newsletter about the promotion. And so I did that and mailed it out every week. And as soon as that pretty much ended, I kept the newsletter going and stopped writing about us and started writing about everybody else.
We've got Steve Regal on the line right now. I want to get to him right away. Steve, how are you doing today?
How you doing? All right, Dave.
We're doing good too. The last time we had you on the show, it was the afternoon. It was right before the Brian Pillman show. We were in Cincinnati, and you had mentioned that you felt your match with Chris Benoit was the most important match of your career. And now that it's happened and it was probably as good a match as you could have hoped for, or was it? How do you feel?
Well, it definitely was the biggest match of my career because it was the start of a new career, So, pretty much everybody had given me up, including myself, had given me up for dead, So I had to go out and, prove to myself more than anything that I could still definitely be a part of this business now. And as far as it being, was it what I hoped for? Yes, I mean, in fact, it was far more than I hoped for. Not the actual match, but the crowd reaction was just incredible. I mean, I still can't believe how you couldn't have actually, wished for anything close to that kind of reaction from people. It was definitely something special. I never forget.
Was that the highlight of your career?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, and that's spanning, a long time and a lot of countries and a lot of things. But Reckless Youth said to me last week, the first time I saw him after that show, he said there was a look on your face when you got in the ring and people were already chanting your name. You were like looking at them like, what are you chanting my name kind of thing for, I was expecting basically to just, Steve Regal, here we go again kind of thing. I don't know what I was expecting, but certainly nothing like that. So it was very special.
It was really, it was so surprising because when you came out, here, you really haven't been on TV. We were on WCW, but with no push. You were on WWF at a time that you probably wish you weren't on TV, in hindsight.
Yeah.
It's been years since you've been healthy, straight, and on television as far as on a national basis.
Yeah.
And what?
The last decent matches that I had were the beginning of '97, so it's been 3 years,
And in this environment, three years is eternity.
Yes.
Because wrestling moves so quickly. And when you came out there, originally you got a real good reaction, and then, you put on that match, and, the people were chanting your name and everything like that. And there was, quite frankly, there was no reason for them to, other than Benoit, I guess, is on TV as a heel, but he's also on an independent show. A guy like Chris Benoit showing up on an independent show is like a superstar. So for them to take you as a babyface when you really, it was interesting just because there was no reason you hadn't worked babyface, you hadn't been on television. But I don't know if that they know your whole story and was just rooting for you to succeed or what the thing was, but it was it was one of the great moments in wrestling this year, I thought.
Yeah, I really don't understand it. I wish somebody from that audience that was involved in that would tell me, or people would let me know. It was just incredible, I had no idea, and I sat there afterwards thinking, like kind of pinch yourself kind of thing, is that really happened, but just have to, appreciate it for what it was, it definitely was something, if I never wrestled again, it topped off a great career that I've had, apart from a few years, but it's been a great career, and it was definitely the highlight. And like I say, I'm looking forward to starting a completely new career. So it was either the beginning of something good or the end of something good.
When After the feedback got back to the office, did you get like people from the company like sort of hearing about the match, and have you gotten talked to as far as a timetable of coming back to the World Wrestling Federation, or a program or anything like that?
I've been talked about a program, but not an exact timetable. So I was spoken to last week about a program. So. Exactly when I believe I've got to go to Raw and to SmackDown next week. So, if I've got to get into talks there, then hopefully it'll be soon. I'd like to obviously get into the mix of things. Now that I'm real confident with my abilities, I'd really like to get back there and start doing the right thing again.
Now you hit, I guess, what would be considered rock bottom.
Yeah.
What was the point when you hit that, and what was the motivation for you to say, this is rock bottom, I'm not going to let it get any worse, I'm going to turn my life around?
I got put into treatment on the 4th of January 1999, and after 10 weeks in there, I worked really hard at it, but I still wasn't getting it. I still just wasn't getting it. And I believe it was March the 13th. It's sort of like they ended up putting me in a lockup facility. They have a lockup facility that you're either in one part of the treatment centre, or there's a drying out place. And I got through back in there for a week because I just was not getting it, and I was resisting everything that they threw at me. On certain levels, I was working really hard. On other levels, certain things I just wasn't getting, I wasn't buying into. And they sent me down there for a week, and I sat there, and, my family life was just because of my, what I've been doing was, just that caused just incredible amount of damage to my family. And, I basically knew that WWF were going to let me go, but I didn't want to, that happened the week after. And it was just when I came out of there, while I was sat there for a week, I thought, this is it, there's just no more, cannot have any ideas, you have to change your complete outlook on life and the way everything is, and just get with it and stick with it, because, there's nowhere to go but down. I mean, they always drum that into you while you're there. There's only two things that going to happen to you if you don't get this, and that's jail or death. And something hit me in there, and that was it. I just went through it, and this is it. I'm going to, stick it out. WWF let me go the following week, so I had no job. I obviously thought, nobody going to hire me. I really thought everybody knew about what was going on. And so I had no idea what I was going to do. But I knew as long as I stayed sober that something would come along if I had to go back to England and start all over again. I knew that I could do it. But, the most important thing in my life now is to stay sober, and that above anything else, above family, above anything, because without that, I don't have a family, I don't have a job, I don't have anything. It's just, life just was miserable, absolutely miserable. I felt dreadful all the time, it was miserable. Life was just chaos, and it was all chaos that I created. And that was it, that's what it took for me to get. And it was incredibly difficult, I was real fortunate in a way that WCW hired me back, but they didn't work me at all. I mean, they used me very, very rarely, And I worked hard when I was there, but my health was not good. When you stop putting all those pills into your body goes into shock after a while for not having them. And you go through spells, and it takes a long time. I mean, some of those drugs and alcohol or whatever it is, some things can be like 5 years in your system, But they reckon about 6 months to 12 months, and it pretty much all comes out. Well, I'd go for a few weeks and I'd be fine, and I'd start doing a little bit of training, and then I'd go for like a month and I'd feel just miserable, you know, like just having a job to get out of the chair. But I just worked through it, and because of the treatment centre that WWF put me in was the best possible place they could put me, you know, they found the best place. And I had the support network with those people that I could talk to anytime I felt, you know, something didn't feel right. I could talk to them. They'd say, right, well, we're expecting this. Okay, do this, do this. And so, you know, I got through all that by, you know, I think it was like the end of October, I started feeling good again, and I could start training a little bit. And within a few months, you know, by the time Christmas rolled around and that, I started feeling good again. And then, like, WCW let me go in February, and pretty much straight away, you know, I called. I was really embarrassed about calling the WWF. Like, I thought it's too soon, but I've got no other options, you know. So I called a few people, and they said, yeah, you can come back as long as you've done the right things, which I signed a deal when I left the treatment place to take random drug screens, which I call them every single day, and I've got like a collar, and if this collar comes up on a computer, I have to go and drop there within a few hours, you know. They tell me where, it doesn't matter what town I'm in, what country I'm in, they'll tell me to go. They'll find a place, they'll just, you know, say, go to this place in this town, and I have to drop. So I've done all that through the year, you know, wherever I'd been, I took the test, so I showed all that to the WWF. They said, yep, that's fine, you come back, go to men, you know, get yourself in shape. WCW obviously let me go. They said I wasn't working enough for the amount of money I was getting paid. That was the reason I was given, which, you know, sort of nonsense, you know. So you know, you're not booking me out.
How can you be working enough days if they don't book you?
Yeah. But that was the excuse I was given anyway. And then the next day they tried to hire me back for less money.
Oh, so that was just basically to get you off contract and onto a lower deal or something.
Well, they wanted me to train people at the power plant and get paid a nightly deal. But, you know, I was very grateful of the job there when I needed it, and I always worked hard. I always worked hard when I was there. And it was like, well, if I'm good enough to train people, but I'm not good enough to be on your shows all the time, you know, I just didn't feel right about that. And if it had been last year when I didn't feel good, I'd have quite happily taken that job, because I really wasn't confident about my abilities at that time. I didn't feel healthy enough. But by then I felt good, you know, and I thought, well, you know, I know I can do this. You know, I was 31 at the time. I thought, I've got plenty of years left. One good thing about, well, you know, all the chaos it caused, but one good thing about the last couple of years, the good thing that's come out of it, I've healed up. You know, I had a lot of injuries, but I've had a lot of time off, so I've healed up. I feel great, you know, I've got no injuries, no nagging problems whatsoever, so I thought, well, I've got to take that chance. I've got to go to the WWF. It's the only place where there's a possibility for me, because, you know, I know I've got the talent to do it, and you know, WCW, I'm just not going to go anywhere. You know, I got to stages in my career there where I was probably one of the best things I had at certain stages of my career there, and it just never went anywhere because you're on that cap level with money. You know, if you're not earning a certain amount of money, you know, they won't give you that extra push because they can't justify paying the other guys all the extra money they're paying them. And I found that to be the case a lot of the time, especially in like the middle of '96 when you know, they were really using me really well. And it just sort of, they were using me real well, and then all of a sudden it was like, just throw me, you know, back down levels, and I kept struggling against that all the time. Obviously, the next few years was all my fault, but there was a lot of times in there from 94 and 90 where it wasn't my fault, you know, and I was working hard for them, and I was doing good work, and they just didn't. So I was always, and everybody that works there knows that, you know, I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know. There's always that frustration when you're there.
We have a lot of emails here to Steve. We also have a couple of calls. I want to start with Todd in Maryland. Todd, you're first up with Steve Regal. And Todd, go ahead.
Hi, Dave. Hi, Steve. How are you guys doing today?
Good, thank you.
Steve, I just wanted to say how much respect I have for you on a personal level, and I just wanted to congratulate you on how far you've come, because it's just a real testament, considering, just reading about how many things you've been through and how long of a journey it's been to see that it's, come out to the bright, the light at the end of the tunnel, if you will. I had two questions for you. First, I was wondering if you had any immediate career plans or long-term goals.
I'm sorry, Dave. I can very, very slightly hear him. Could you just repeat that, please?
Yeah, he's just saying that he was wondering what are your long-term goals?
Long-term goals in the wrestling business?
Yeah.
Just to go and do the best work that I can possibly do, and be try and be a major part of anything that I'm put in and part of the WWF, I also really enjoy helping people. I've always, all the time that I spent with WCW, I always went to the power plant and always helped a lot of people. And I'm enjoying doing that now in Memphis. So any time that, anybody wants to pick my brains on wrestling, I'm always more than happy to do that. And I see myself moving towards that as I get older.
Anything else, Todd?
Yeah, I was wondering what his thoughts are on Davey Boy Smith, who seems like he's sort of on the wrong end of a very similar path.
Did you know Davey Boy Smith? I know you're both from England. I mean, did you ever have any meetings? I know, like, he came over to Canada when you would have been very, very young.
Yes.
But, I guess you bumped into him in WCW.
Yeah, we've met each other a few times. My feelings, I wish him the best, and I hope he gets, sorted out with whatever problems he's got, whatever they may be, that's something I don't get involved in other people's, problems anymore. People ask me, would you give advice to this, what would you say to other wrestlers? I'm not giving any advice to anybody, because I look after me, and that might sound selfish, but, take care of your, take responsibilities for your own things, and don't worry about blaming other people or other things for your problem or trying to give advice out. I'm just looking after me, which is, that's all I can do. So I really hope that he, sorts out whatever problems he's got.
As far as how hard is going back, I know a lot of drug issues, have to do with environment, and how hard is it, especially if you go back on the road full time with the WWF, that environment that you're in with the traveling and the ease. It's almost, like when you're out there wrestling every night and traveling so much, that ease to fall into that pattern and knowing you have to work so hard to avoid it, or you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Do you think is that difficult?
I haven't had a problem with it at all. Not one little bit. But, I really think I've got down as far as I could possibly go. I mean, this is certainly not the place to talk about, how low down my life was, but it was absolutely miserable. And when I finally realized that, there's nothing that I could possibly think of that could make me go back to that life, because it was, it was horrific. It was just horrendous. There's no other words for it. It was just a miserable existence. And so, when I was on the road for WCW last year, it doesn't bother me. I see guys do stuff. There's no way that I'm going back to that. And whatever it takes for me to keep away from that, that's what I'll do. If I get hurt, there's plenty of medication you can take that's non-narcotic and addictive. That's just taking responsibility for yourself. I have books. I carry books around with me. When I get to WWF, I'll give it to the trainers there, the agents, anybody. If I get knocked out, anything, there's certain things that I cannot have. You can't play around with this. Once you become addicted to one thing, it's incredibly easy to become addicted to anything that's has addictive properties, you know. So you can't drink alcohol. You just cannot mess with anything. And so, you know, that's my responsibility to take care of that. And so, you know, I don't see there being a problem because that's, you know, I plan it all out exactly what I'm doing, and, you know, I make sure that everybody knows. That's why I'm very open about this. I don't hide anything from anybody because nobody's got anything to come back at me with, you know. I mean, I take responsibility for everything that I do, and everything that could possibly happen to me. I know what to do if that, you know, comes around. So.
Before you had your problems, what would you say when you look back at your career, started as a teenager?
Yeah.
What would be your high points? What are the things you're most proud of as far as here, Japan, Europe, anywhere? You've been almost everywhere.
Yeah. There was a spell where a lot of the heavyweight guys in England just went from country to country. They didn't really get a lot of work in England. They went to Europe, and they went to all the African countries and all over the place. And there was a spell where that's what I was doing, you know. I just went from one country to the next, and I was really proud of all that work because you know, you were taken in, sometimes two of you, but usually just one. I would go someplace and you'd wrestle all the local guys, all the top guys they had, you know, and you'd do long matches. I mean, some really long, you know, 15 5-minute round championship matches with guys that were horrible. I mean, absolutely rotten, you know. But, you know, it certainly wouldn't be watchable in this country nowadays, but for their style, you know, at the time, and all the kinds of moves that I do, you know, putting people in and out of moves and making them look like they can do a lot more than they can actually do. You know, you could go on with these guys and make them look great, and I was always proud of doing that, those long matches, and getting through them and leaving on a high note, you know, putting over their top guys. You know, you'd beat a couple of guys for a few weeks, say if you were there a month, and then the last night you'd make the top guy look, you know, as good as you could. And I was always proud that everywhere I went, I was always asked back several times in you know, a lot of places. And I was always asked back, and I was always proud of that. As far as, you know, I'm not going to say anything in particular, but I was always proud that I could do that, and I was always proud that I was asked to do that, because there was only a select few guys in England that went on those kind of trips, and that they were very close-knit, you know. They didn't let many people into that fold, and I was like 19 when I started doing that, and I was, you know, I really enjoyed doing that. I came here when I was 24. For those few years, you know, I was always in and out of different countries and working with all the guys and all the different styles. I mean, every place you went had a different style. And, you know, you got a lot of these places. I remember going to South Africa, and I thought it was going to be tremendous, because all the guys that I really admired in England all used to go to South Africa, and I thought, well, these guys must be great. And I got there, and I stood at the back of the first night watching the matches, and it was horrendous. They were dreadful, you know, but they were absolutely killing each other. But it looked as phony as it could possibly look. They were dropping each other on their heads, and they were tripping over each other's feet, but they were killing each other. I thought, what have I got myself into here, you know? But I was always proud that, you know, I could go on with their guys and make them look like, you know, as good as I could, and get asked back. So that it was all a great time for me, all that.
Steve, you know, were you in England kind of like during the decline of the local British wrestling, or did you come along a little after that? And I was wondering what your thoughts are of. I know that British wrestling at one point, you know, was really, really big on television.
Yes.
And then it kind of died out until the WWF, you know, really got strong. Wrestling was, I wouldn't say dead, but it was at a very low level in England for many years.
Yeah. I started in 1983. I had my first matches. I was just 15 then, but like 16 and 17, I just worked on the independent level in England. When I was 18, I got my first break with Dale Martin's, which was a TV company. And I went to work for them, and after 3 months I quit because I did a couple of TV matches, then they started putting me in the, if anybody knows what I'm talking about, I know how bad it was, in the Big Daddy tag matches. And I was Big Daddy's partner, and I was on with, you know, Giant Haystacks, always some other villain, you know, and it was rough, you know, and I really wanted to learn this, because I spent a lot of years not learning anything. I was on with a lot of guys that, you know, that all I did basically was hold on to them, and they put themselves in and out of a load of moves, but they never actually showed me how to do that. So I was just like, I might as well have not been there, you know. They could have done that with a broomstick or something, you know. And I really wanted to learn this, and I quit the company. And about that time that I quit, Brian Dixon, who was the other big promoter in England, got half of the TV shows. So 1 week it'd be Dale Martin's, 1 week. And then not long after that, it all folded. I think it was '88 when it folded. And what exactly happened, there's a guy called Greg Dyke, who was in charge of ITV at the time. And he came along and decided that wrestling was too working class, and all the comedy shows that were on in England and all the sports that working class people like, which is the majority of the people there, he decided that he didn't want that. And he started showing like American football, you know, and stuff that you know, that's great here, but nobody in England understood it, you know. We'd never seen it, and like stopped all the games that people liked, took rugby off TV and stuff, and decided wrestling was too working class. And so the first thing he did to try and get rid of it, he used to have a 4 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon a spot every week for years, and it used to draw big ratings, and he moved it to 12 o'clock, well, 12 noon. Everybody in England, pretty much everybody that has a job, works Saturday half day. It's just the way it is over there. So that cut the viewing figures straight away to about a third within like 2 weeks of it changing to 12 noon. And within a few months of it being like that, him being in charge went to the company bosses and said, look, this wrestling's not drawing, and took it off TV. And there was absolute, uproars in England. Absolute uproars, but it didn't affect me in any way whatsoever. It killed a lot of people's careers. It didn't affect me. I think I was only on TV about 6 times. And then, you know, like, it just killed guys. Guys that were working every single night, and the house show business died off. And guys that were working all the time would just have to get regular jobs. And, there was a stage where, you know, you could work every night of the week, and you know, 6, 7 nights a week, and it was down to 2 and 3 jobs a week, and then to 1 job a week, and it just got really bad. But after a while, I think it was around about 89 or beginning of 90, it started to pick up just on house show business. I was working in and out of the country, but I was also working for Brian Dixon, and he just put on tremendous shows. Like, top of the bill would be Dave Taylor against Vic Finley, and, you know, Danny Boy Collins against whoever, you know, and they're just really good shows here, and he had a lot of real good talent. There's some great wrestlers there, and we just kept working and working, and we built all the business up, and it went real well for a while. And then they killed it all off. What exactly happened with that, they killed it again, was they started putting on, like, fake American shows. They started having guys dressing up like the Road Warriors, and they'd have like a fake Undertaker and everything. And there was these guys that weren't any good, you know, and they were going around to all the buildings that we did regularly with this show, and billing it as American wrestling and all it. And so once people went and saw these people and realized that, you know, they'd been cheated, they just didn't go back. So it killed all the business off again. And it was about that time that I think like 93, I was away. No, sorry, 92, I was away 9 months, the whole year, basically. I was away, and in that 9 months, it basically killed all the business right down. But luckily for me, the next year, January, I came to America, so it really didn't affect me. But it just killed a lot of guys' careers. And then my best friend, Robbie Brookside, he was a tremendous talent. Danny Boy Collins, a lot of guys that were really talented guys, just ended up with no work, you know, and they all had to get jobs and different things. It was a bad time.
Brian, any questions you got for Steve?
Yeah, I was wondering, were you trained by your grandfather?
No, I wasn't. My grandfather was a wrestler, but I wasn't trained by him. I mean, he used to tell me different things, but my grandfather basically just worked on carnivals. You know, he wrestled and he boxed and whatever he had to do, you know, he'd fight. He'd bare knuckle fight or whatever he had to do, you know, to make some money. But he was quite old when I started. He was, I believe he was 80 when I started wrestling, so no, I wasn't.
Did you do carnival wrestling
Yes.
at any point?
Yes, that's how I started.
That's right. You told me that. What's it like as far as mentally, you know, fighting people who I guess generally wouldn't know wrestling, but you also don't know what to make of them because you don't know what they're going to do?
Scary. I mean, you know, you know, you only you kept as many people out as possible. You obviously had plants, you know, that you worked in the crowd, but sometimes you couldn't avoid people. A lot of the fighting that went on was guys jumping in the ring. You know, they get carried away with it. They'd all been out drinking beer all day, you know, walking around, and they'd see somebody who they thought was, you know, probably somebody who were working with, thought that they were, you know, getting beaten up, and they'd jump in the ring from behind. It was very, very dangerous place to be. There was a lot of very, very violent place to be. But to actually take on a straight, you know, a straight person was nerve-wracking because you had no idea. And, you know, I'll be the first to hold my hand up to say that if I thought that there was a chance of them beating me, I used to take some really bad liberties with people. They were bigger, you know, or just looked like that they were dangerous. As soon as their head came between the top and middle rope, you know, I used to boot them straight in the face and just drag them in and, you know, did what I had to do because there wasn't a lot of money there and it was a dangerous way of making a living.
There's something, before we get to calls, I got this email that I was interested in. What is your opinion as far as the guys that you're down in Memphis with, the younger guys like K Crush and Reckless Youth? What are your opinion of those guys?
K Crush has got so much personality and talent. It's unbelievable. I mean, you know, he's just got everything that you could possibly want. He works hard, you know, and not only the talent-wise, I mean, just as a real nice guy, works hard. The same with Reckless Youth, you know, like, K Crush has got a great look. Reckless, you know, if they just find the right look for him, he's got everything they need, you know. I mean, the way I see him and the way I see him, you know, I've worked with him a lot. I see him, I know WWF don't like masked men, but I see him being a kind of a Tiger Mask deal, you know. Not exactly Tiger Mask, but, you know, that, to me, just one guy in the company that did it and did it right and can do the kind of moves that he can do in the right kind of outfit. To work with Dean and to work with, you know, the other light heavyweights would be tremendous. And because he just needs that right look or something else, but that's what I see when I see him all the time, because he just studies Tiger Mask, you know, all the time. He's always watching him, and I see that in him, just having the right look. But they've both got, you know, a lot of work ethic and a lot of talent.
How about anybody else there that really impresses you?
I'm working with the posse at the moment, and, you know, that they're getting better. I see a lot of talent in Joey Abs, a lot of talent, you know, and the other two guys, Pete and Rodney, work really, really hard. You know, I mean, they really do put a lot of effort in, a lot of extra effort. So, but they've only been, I haven't even been working with them a few weeks, so I can't really say much apart from, you know, they really work hard, all three of them. And there's really nobody else. Meany was there for a while, and, you know, Meany dropped a lot of weight, and he was, you know, his work ethic was great. That's about it, really. I'm supposed to get some new guys next week that are coming from Shawn Michaels' school, which I believe are, you know, are very, very good, so that'll be great, you know, and I'm sure they've got a tremendous work ethic. I'm sure, you know, I don't know Shawn. I've only met him a few times, but, you know, as good as he is, I'm sure he wouldn't let them come out of his school if they weren't really good, because, you know, his name's on them, so I'm looking forward to seeing those guys, you know, and working with them.
Let's go to Mike in Illinois. Mike, you're next up.
Yeah, hi, Dave.
Hi, how you doing?
And hello, Mr. Regal.
Hello.
I was wondering, weren't you teamed up with Tiger Ali Singh for a while down in Memphis? I'm trying to. Maybe I read something wrong, but.
Was Tiger Ali Singh in Memphis?
No.
No. He went. I think Tiger Ali Singh got sent to Puerto Rico.
I think he's talking about Ali.
Oh yeah. Did you? Yeah. Ali worked on the other promotion in Memphis though. He worked for Randy Hales.
Yeah, he doesn't work for.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I must have read something wrong then.
It might be Steve Bradley and Tiger Ali Singh working together in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I believe that's it. I think I've read that. The two of those tagged together.
Okay. The question I had was, one thing we always hear about Japan and Mexico, but you rarely hear about wrestling in Africa or in Asia besides Japan. And I was wondering, did you ever wrestle in India or Malaysia around there, or do you know if what type of wrestling events happen in those countries?
I've wrestled in India. I've wrestled in South Africa and in Egypt.
Did you wrestle on in Egypt and India? Was that local wrestlers, or did you wrestle on tour?
No, I've never been on tour with anybody. Like I say, apart from since I've been in this country, it was always wrestling for local promotions and wrestling the local wrestlers.
How were the local wrestlers, and what type of style did they do in? You talked about South Africa, but India and Egypt.
Well, the Indians were. They're national sports wrestling, and there were some real good guys and some real bad guys. As there is in any company around the world. Just a lot of grappling. That they just like to grab a hold and try and throw you as many times as they can, and show how strong they are. And there's some real good wrestlers. I wrestled a guy there who. He was a policeman in New Delhi, and he won a silver medal in the '84 Olympics. I really can't remember his name, but he was really good. I think I did eight 5-minute round match with him. It was really good. And then Dara Singh, who was the big star in India, he was just the promoter when I was there. He was retired from wrestling. I wrestled his nephew, which I believe was Baljit Singh, and he was very good. I believe he lives in Los Angeles, and I had some real good matches with him. With some of the local wrestlers, weren't very good. But I don't think that's anybody's fault, because they just never work. They only work so many months of the year, and they only work. That they'll work a couple of times a week. For 4 months of the year. So, some like myself, it took me. I was nearly 3 years in this business before I had anywhere close to a clue, and I was working every single day. You just, some people take time, I was one of those people. I didn't have any natural ability for this. I didn't have talent, and I just doing it, over and over and over again, and watching a lot of people and asking them to help me, you learn. So a lot of guys, people knock some people, you've got to give them a chance, because, with the amount of time that I've had. That's the unfortunate thing. I tell a lot of guys that I've been working with. I used to tell them the power plant. That's the sad thing about today. Unless you come in with bundles of natural talent, you get blown away straight away. People think you're no good. Some people need time to get good. There's a lot of good guys out there that don't get the chance because they might be on the verge of it, just because they can't perform on that single day. Or they're not, what people expect when they first see them, they get pushed to one side. But that's just the way the business is now. There's nothing you can do about it.
Anything else, Mike?
Yeah. Just two real quick questions. The one for Mr. Regal. Did you train Kurt Angle? Did you help train Kurt Angle? Because I'm hoping when you get the call up to WWF that you have a match with him, because I really would like to see that match. And one for you, Dave, as far as is the Kurt Angle, Triple H, Stephanie angle, is that going to be something that's going to be a slowly developing angle, or something that they want to open up real fast within the next few months, within, like, let's say, SummerSlam, you know?
I don't. I mean, it's been because they started it like right at the beginning of the year, and then it seemed like they completely dropped it, and now last night they're picking back up on it. So,
what?
I don't know. I don't know. No one's really said anything, as far as it. It doesn't look like it's something imminent, but it certainly looks like, eventually, I guess Helmsley and Stephanie have to split up, and I guess that he's going to be the reason when they do so, and that'll be his catalyst to being, in that. That top spot. Maybe Helmsley will be a babyface by then, and Angle will be the heel. I don't know where they're going with it.
But you don't know if it's like something that we'll see in the next few months, or something like, let's say, WrestleMania.
Oh, I don't know. I don't even think that they know as far as like a timetable of it. I think it's kind of like whenever it's there, and then whenever the time is right. I mean, they got Helmsley with so many different guys that they're going to go through, and I think that when they feel that. I'm guessing it's when they feel it's time to turn Helmsley. Maybe that'll be the heel that he goes with first, and Helmsley will be so strong that he'll get Angle up into that spot that it's always good to have another guy in that top echelon.
That's gonna be tough though, because it's almost like the fans want to see those two get together, and I don't know. I almost think if Angle stole Stephanie, he'd be the babyface in it.
I don't think so. The way she gets almost like as good of a heel, response as Triple H at times.
I watch the show and I just see the people wanting to cheer Triple H, and I think that the whole thing is they keep him against the guys that they won't cheer him against, but I think that they're ready for it, and I think Angle, I think Angle's going to be on top as a heel before the day comes. You may be right though. I mean, this stuff isn't like planned in a book for 6 months or anything like that. It's like whatever the fans kind of dictate is kind of where it winds up.
As far as my question goes, no, I didn't train him. I'd love to take credit for it because he's incredibly talented, but no, I've never helped train him at all.
Well, I hope I see that match real soon, and I hope, especially from hearing the reports from the Pillman event about you and Benoit having the match of the year so far. I hope to really see you real soon. You're one of my favorite wrestlers when you were in WCW.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks a lot for having me on.
Steve, we talked a bit about this yesterday. What besides Benoit, are there, if you had to name 3-4 opponents in WWF that you would really look forward to wrestling, and why? And who would they be?
I'd really like to wrestle Eddie. I'd really like to wrestle Triple H because me and him used to train together a lot in WCW. And, he was a great person to be around, and he just soaked up everything I used to show him. He could just do it. And you could see another side to him, that you don't see because, we could change stuff up and do a lot more of my stuff. And because he can do basically most of the stuff that I can, so I'd really like to do that. There's not many people up there I wouldn't like to work with, to be honest. In fact, they've got such a great amount of talent up there. I've never worked with Perry. I've trained with him at the power plant, but I've never worked with him, and I think I could have some really good matches with him. Obviously, I like working with Dean. I always have good matches with him, so... And I'd really like to work with those Hardy boys. I think they're just tremendous. After watching those matches last night, they had Chris had the Jeff. It's really, really good. Enjoyed that.
With Helmsley, when he was sort of like your understudy in WCW when he was John Paul Levesque.
Well, we used to tag together for a while. We would tag together. We were like the original Blue Bloods for about a month.
Right.
That's when he went,
And what's your thoughts on him becoming, right at the just about the top guy in the business right now? From and not all that many years. It was 6 years ago maybe when you were teaming with him.
Yes, I couldn't be any happier for anybody because he really is one of the nicest people I've ever been around in this business. know, I get on great with him. He was, you know, he used to come to my house, and, you know, he was just a real great person to be around. And like I say, you know, I always knew that he had something special, and I always knew that he, you know, and I told him this at the time, that he's one of those guys that needed to work every night, and he just wouldn't have had that chance in WCW at the time. We wasn't working that much, and you know, it's obviously been the greatest thing that ever happened to him going to the WWF. If he'd have stayed in WCW, he would have became, you know, great. You know how it goes there. You know, you start off on a certain amount of money, and you just never seem to get much above that. You know. And he would have been held back. I believe that anyway. Doesn't matter how talented you are. At the time, he wouldn't have got the his rightful spot. And yeah, I couldn't be any happier for anybody. I really couldn't, because he certainly deserves it. He's worked really hard.
Okay, guys, it's time for WF Daily Trivia. Here's today's question: who were the participants in the first ever ladder match in the World Wrestling Federation? Brian, you got that one?
Let me think about it.
Okay. We got Steve Regal here, along, of course, Brian Alvarez always here. We're going to go to Dusty in Nebraska. Dusty, you're next up with Steve Regal.
Hey, what's up?
Not too much.
I just wanted to ask Steve about his shoot, or I don't know if it's a shoot or not, but him and Goldberg back on Nitro a year or two ago. What happened with that?
We've got a few emails about it. Steve, what could you describe the match? You had a match with Goldberg a couple of years back.
Oh, I did. I've had to explain this a few times. This is exactly what happened. Before the match, me and Bill were stood together, and one of the agents that still works for WCW now, so I won't mention his name, stood with us and told us exactly how to do that match. Exactly how to do it. Now, Bill Goldberg will tell you the same story. At the time, I don't think Bill had a match over about 2 minutes, and this was between 6 and 7, I believe. They told us exactly what to do, exactly how to do it. So we went in there and we started it off, and there came a few times in there where, you know, it was nobody's fault, but Bill just, you know, forgot what he was doing. So I was trying to, I can't hit myself, so I was having to grab him until he figured out what he was doing, and you know, I was hitting him and doing whatever. But we were told exactly what to do. I came out the ring, you know, he didn't have a problem with it. He said, I'm sorry, you know, he said, I just forgot certain things. And Eric Bischoff went ballistic at me. He said I'd eaten him up and done this and done that, in the presence of this certain road agent. And I was waiting for him to, he was actually sat looking at a piece of paper. I was waiting for him to look up from the piece of paper and said, you know, own up to it. You know, I told him to do it this way. Because basically what Eric wanted was him to go in and squash me, which would have been fine with me, but, you know, the agent laid it out, look, this is a longer match, we need you to do this. And so then the agent never looked up from his piece of paper. And so I'm not sure if that led to me getting fired, but I was let go within, I think, about 6 weeks later, so that's the story there. It was certainly nothing, me trying to prove anything to Bill Goldberg or to anybody else, which has been, you know, said time and time again, but that's not the case. So there we go.
Anything else, Dustin?
Well, I was also wondering, is there any chance that you know what your gimmick's going to be when you get back into WWF? If you're going to keep the man's man gimmick, or is there any chance of you getting Jeeves to come and manage you?
I certainly bloody hope not.
Jeeves, oh God.
No, I don't think so, no.
All right, well, thanks a lot. I was just looking forward to it sometimes.
You're going to steal my question. Go ahead, Brian.
What were your first thoughts when they gave you that gimmick?
That song.
To be honest with you, I was so screwed up at the time. My mind was, so, you know, just so messed up. I just, you know, did whatever they wanted me to do, you know. So
that song, I can still.
that, you know, it's funny, but
you'll never forget
all the stuff that I've done in WCW and whatever, The only thing I'm remembered for is that stupid song. People at shows now in the middle of Arkansas and Mississippi start singing that stupid song. It's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. It's like the biggest wind-up of all time. You know, I mean, you can close your eyes at night and you can hear that stupid song going in the background. Like, I don't know, it's going to come back. So that's I just laugh about it because I know, there's no question that song's going to come back to haunt me in some respect somewhere. So
it's gonna be your Red Rooster.
Oh yeah. I mean,
they haven't put it on the WWF CD yet.
Just as a novelty.
It's just like there's two things in my life that are going to come back to. Well, three things. I'm making sure that one of them can't haunt me, and that's the drug problem. But that song's going to haunt me. And then when I was younger, when I was 16 or 17, we used to do all these independent shows in England, and a friend of mine had this video camera, which were quite a novelty back in the early, mid-80s. And we used to film these shows, and we'd be backstage at these, places we were working at, just a few people there. And in between times, we'd be doing these interviews on tape. And I know he's got every single one of these, and they're rot. Just absolutely rot. And I know this guy used to wrestle with me, but he makes tapes basically for a living. Whatever, any kinds of tapes, that's what he does. He pirates tapes and stuff, the guy I used to work with in England. And I know he's going to start putting them out there. If anything comes up, he'll start getting them out there on the tape market. So I know these are going to come back to haunt me. So I'm expecting that at any time. He'll probably put the backing track up with that stupid song he'll have from somewhere. So there'll be hot property on the internet, I'm sure.
There's one thing, I got this from Hutch Hoskins. I want to read this. This has to do with what we were talking about earlier in the show. And he said he'd like to hear from somebody at the show. This is the show in Cincinnati about the response. So he goes, I thought I'd give him, my 2 cents. I followed Steve's career for the last 6 or 7 years. I heard all the stories, heard him talk about his problems. I remember seeing a WCW pay-per-view match with Ultimo Dragon and with Steve that was really good, so that made it even worse that a guy with so much talent had so many problems. Seeing him fall apart before our eyes really hurt me as a wrestling fan, as a human being. And after hearing the main event for the Pillman show had been made, Chris Benoit versus Steve Regal, I initially didn't know what to think. I wasn't sure which Steve Regal we would see. I had been hearing reports of how Steve Regal was in great condition and focused on turning his life around. At that moment, I was ready to see the match, which would signify the return of Steve Regal. That was a show that had a lot of smart fans, and I think we all felt the same way. Our excitement about seeing Steve Regal brought all the fans who didn't know the Regal story into the match. The great fan reaction and the superb quality of the match made it a very special night for everyone involved. So, anyway, that's what he said.
What can you say? People, it's, when people actually, you get that used to people knocking everything that, whatever you do, people, but there are people out there that still appreciate talent, and it's nice to hear.
Before we get to the calls, I want to read this one for Brian, actually. This is from Chris Cassidy. It says, nothing to do with Steve Regal at all, but lost in all the frenzy over the earth-shattering Bill Goldberg turn is the fact that the real surprise was last night on Nitro, but it was not properly addressed due to a rare production glitch. In a move that promises to change the landscape of professional wrestling forever, D'Lo Brown's chest protector has signed a 3-year, big-money contract with World Championship Wrestling. As you saw last night, said Eric Bischoff, WCW's executive Russo babysitter. Oh, God. The deal is signed, sealed, and delivered, and there is nothing that Vince McMahon can do about it. The chest protector was noticeably absent from WF television for the last several months, but nobody expected something of this magnitude to happen. Asked what impact he expects a chest protector to make, Bischoff said, why don't you ask Ric Flair? Bischoff continued, look at the impact Chesty has already made. Already, no talent, Ric Flair is gone. Who knows what else could make this happen? Said Vince Russo, the god among men. This is what makes WCW great. This came out of left field. It shocked everyone. When I was on WCW Live after the show, nobody could believe the reaction of the fans, and it's what everyone in wrestling is talking about. So anyway.
I got a question, by the way. How old is your girlfriend's son?
Not
her son. Brother.
My girlfriend has brothers that are 17 and 12. In fact, one of them's listening to the show right now.
Okay, I have a question about, you might want to ask her this. Would she ever trust her 12-year-old to Scott Steiner?
He's the kind of guy I'd like babysitting for me,
And what a terrible job. He's just like, okay.
Hey, where's the kid at? Oh, yeah.
He let some girl just watch him.
Two slappers
then he walked away.
Two slappers come walking along with no clothes, and here, son, go and play with them for a while. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Kevin Nash did not do his parenting skills any justice last night.
No. Son, just go in the room with the slappers. There's a box of cigarettes on there and a couple of pound of crack. Just help yourself. You know.
Yeah, everyone noticed the name of that nephew too. Hunter, yeah. So anyway, at least it wasn't Pat or Gerald.
Whatever happened to the Harris twins?
What?
Whatever happened to the Harris twins?
They became the Harris twins. They just haven't been on TV for the last couple weeks. I don't know. I guess they're around. I don't know. Yeah. So you watched that show last night, Steve?
I watched the first hour. I don't know.
And then you switched over?
Switched over to the proper show, yeah.
What did you think of the Jericho match with Helmsley?
Very good. The whole show's good, isn't it? You know, it's just, you know, I don't know. I just like. I think the show's tremendous. I like there's so much wrestling on the show and all the stories. Everything means something, and you know, what can you say? You know, guys work so hard and everybody puts effort in, and I just really like it. I'm not just saying that because I'm an employee there. I don't want to go on and rant about WCW, but what a lot of people don't give any credit for was when Nitro was really good, you know, they always put all the stock in the fact that the last 20 minutes was NWO. They forget about all the times that there was all the great matches on that kept people interested for the first hour and 30 minutes, which was all good wrestling matches. For a while, they had, you know, there's a lot of great matches. Dean would always be in a great match. Chris had always been a match. Eddie would be in one. I was doing some good work at the time. You know, and people forget about that, you know, and put all stock in what happens at the end. But you've got to keep people interested for that you know, that throughout the show. And, I mean, that everything on WWF is just great, you know. They just do everything real well.
So you hold on just a second. We've got Al, real quick, could you tell us who won the WWF trivia question?
Sure. It was Alan Smolek of Illinois and Lenny Thomas of Florida.
Yeah, the first ladder match.
Brett and Sean.
Brett, you got it, Brett and Sean. That's right, was on a Coliseum video match, right?
I have that tape.
Yeah. How was that match?
Yeah, it was all right.
Huh?
It was nowhere near the level of, like, Shawn Michaels and Scott Hall or anything like that.
Yeah.
About 8 minutes.
Uh-huh. We're going to ask Steve, this is an email here. At one point, I guess that there was a plan of you being part of the Four Horsemen. How did that come about, and how did that not come about, I guess?
Oh, I think about 5 or 6 times I was going to be in the Four Horsemen. I never got an answer why I wasn't. There was all kinds of times I was supposed to be in it, and then I wasn't. And I really don't know. I really no idea exactly how any of it panned out, but there was several times that I was told I was going to be in there. They were going to work me into it somehow. But I don't know. The last time, I believe, was the last time I won the TV belt. And they told me to start holding my fingers up, you know, because I'd won it 4 times. The Horseman deal, but that you know, went nowhere. So I really don't know.
I got a question for you, because when you brought up the WCW days when they were doing so well in the ratings, it reminded me that you did a quick program, actually several month long, a couple pay-per-view matches and stuff with Rey Mysterio Jr.
Yes.
And what was it like? I mean, he's so talented, but he's also, you know, so much smaller than you.
I suggested that because nobody else wanted to work with him. When he came, everybody, oh, he's too small, you know, and I hate that. I hate when guys talk about people being a certain size in this business, because some of the greatest wrestlers I've ever seen haven't been, you know, big guys. But if the talent's there, they can work with anybody, you know, if the guys are willing to work with them. And nobody would work with him, you know, he was just on with other Mexicans. He was on with Dean, but none of the bigger guys had worked with him. And so I said, I work with him, you know. And a lot of people knocked it, but you know, it had a purpose. I was trying to prove a point that you can go out and have good matches with this guy. And, you know, I really enjoyed it. I really liked working with him. I worked with him quite a bit on the house shows and that. Went to Germany and we worked a lot. And I always really enjoyed working with him. And after a while, especially on the house shows, because we had, you know, we started, and you not got that pressure on you to do a quick match or whatever it was. We could do a lot more creative stuff, or we started doing more. After the TV matches, like, finished, but then we had a run together working on shows. And so we started, you know, that's when the best work came in, because we started making the best of each other's stuff once we got used to each other. And I really enjoyed it, you know. I mean, he's so talented and so good. How can you not? You know, and all of a sudden after I worked with him, and then everybody else started wanting to work with him, you know.
Do you think that as far as the Mexican guys that were there, that WCW missed the boat, or do you think that it was just something that wasn't going to make it in this country?
I think they missed the boat big time.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's a lot. There was guys, you know. There was Ray and Engelbert, Juventud, and Psychosis. They were just quality guys, you know, who could work with anybody. And, you know, I used to really like working with Psychosis. And I don't know, I can't see. I could never see it. I sit back and I used to say, well, why don't they see what I see? Then again, like, I look at some of the guys that you know, they were using at the time, and it's the same with guys, you know, you sitting there, guys talking how great they think they are, and I think, well, do they not watch what I watch? Do they watch themselves on TV and think that what they do is good, or I don't know, and I could never understand what people saw in it, because you know, watch those guys and see that there's unlimited things you can do with them. I can understand with some of the guys because you know, they were very much set in you know, in the right arm and right leg thing, and they couldn't really adjust, you know, and you can understand that. But you know, guys like that they could work, you know, American style and do what needed to be done. I didn't quite get it. Then again, don't quite get a lot of things, you know.
Our next question here, this is from A. Anton, and it was asking you if you ever fought in Greece, and have you ever done any kind of pancration style or shoot style competitive wrestling?
No, I haven't. Never. I've been on holiday to Crete once, but no, I haven't. I'm just thinking, listening to those commercials, then you need to give that Marcus Bagwell the number for Avatar. If he dare get any further back, he'd be combing his arse, won't he? Unbelievable.
This is someone who was asking, what were your thoughts of Hector Garza? I remember you worked with him once on a TV match when he first came in.
Yeah, we didn't really get a chance to, you know, do a great deal. It was just a real quick match. I believe it. If I remember rightly, it was about 4 minutes. So we didn't really get a chance to, you know, I used to love watching him when he worked in those, you know, the Lucha six-mans. I used to think they were great, you know. But, you know, he wasn't there so much, was he? You know, he used to come in, do those, and then he was off for a long time, and I never really saw him after that, you know. But obviously got a lot of talent, you know.
Well,
how close are you with Fit Finlay?
Excuse me?
Fit Finlay?
What about him?
How close are you to him? I remember you guys had some awesome matches. There was like that parking lot brawl.
The parking lot brawl, yeah.
Oh, dear.
And then he ended up getting injured. Just wondering if you talked to him, you know.
Yeah, actually, I spoke to him today. He lives just a couple of miles down the road from me. You know, people have never seen how really great Fit Finlay is in this country. You know, he hasn't had the opportunity to show that. Fit Finlay's probably my favourite wrestler that I've ever seen. You know, I've watched his matches. He used to do the best. Doesn't matter who he worked with, they always had the best match with him. Pretty similar to Chris Benoit now. Doesn't matter who Chris works with, Chris gets the best match out of that that opponent, you know. Finlay used to make everybody fight for everything they got. So they had you either had the greatest match you had, or he'd just eat you alive. Most people, he brought out something in them. You know, I used to just sit in awe just watching him. Matches used to have in England, and then when you go to Germany and they'd do, you know, great big long championship matches. I saw Eddie Gilbert came over 2 times in '92 when I was there for Otto Lance, and did different championships with him, and they were just phenomenal, you know. I mean, really long matches. I don't know, 12, 15 rounds maybe, you know. I mean, just non-stop, up and down. It was, I mean, if you never get any tapes from, you know, those long matches he used to do with those, it's just incredible. From the early 80s, the TV matches he did in England, I mean, he was just phenomenal, you know. It was just, I love that. Guys that move around real good and work real solid and believable, and, you know, he's just great. Just a shame he's never been really used. Right? I mean,
Were you a fan watching during like the I don't know, the era in British wrestling where like Mark Rollerball Rocca, those type of guys, Marty Jones?
Oh yeah, Marty Jones was. I met Marty when I was 18, and he took me under his wing and trained me from there onwards. And oh yeah, they were just the greatest. That was the best time to be a wrestling fan. Was like the late 70s and early 80s in England. Like Tiger Mask was there, Sammy Lee, and Rocco was there, and Marty, and occasionally Dynamite had come in. And, you know, these guys worked together. Just unbelievable, you know. They like, you know, you'll be able to correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but they changed the scope of wrestling, you know, the shape of wrestling, because they'd all been to Mexico, most of it, been to Japan, they'd all been to Calgary, and they all had the British style, and they just mixed it all together, and they put all the best bits of everything together, and made a real credible, you know, hard-hitting, flying around kind of style, you know, with lots of crazy bumps. And you know, the guys like Eddie and Chris that do that style nowadays, I mean, that's, but as far as I know anyway, that's where it stemmed from, and I used to watch that when I was a kid. Just incredible. Absolutely incredible. Every Saturday afternoon you used to turn on TV at 4 o'clock, and there'd be one of those kind of, you know, they didn't change the 4 guys, you know, and that sometimes we something they just always incredible matches, you know, and they all went separate ways. Like Sam went back and became Tiger Mask, and then, you know, Rocco was Black Tiger, and Marty pretty much stayed in England, and Dynamite obviously went on to the great things he went on to. I used to go and watch Dynamite when I was 7 years old. He was 16. I used to go and watch him, you know, actually live. I mean, imagine that when you know, a little kid just wanting to be a wrestler. I mean, I always knew from being about 5 years old I wanted to be a wrestler. When you're 7 years old watching, you know, I'd never seen anything like it. Just a lot of what I used to think was all men in England. You know, a lot of them weren't, but, you know, somebody that was, you know, was like the absolute hero, you know. I mean, a 16-year-old kid just looked like the kids that used to know, used to go to school. And there he is, you know, flying around and doing all this great stuff. Incredible.
Let's go to Adam in Brooklyn. Adam, you're up with Steve Regal.
Hey, Steve. I just wanted to say I'm a huge fan of you. I loved your matches with like Larry Zbyszko and Mark Marrow and Ricky Steamboat. But I was wondering, like, I remember there was an incident a few years ago in the WWF where you faced John Tenta, who was Golga at the time, and like I remember they like had to edit the show out of the edit the match out of one of the shows because something happened, like his mask fell off or something like that. I was wondering if you know anything about it.
I'll be quite honest with you. I mean, I vaguely remember it, but at that time, you know, my whole life was totally a mess, and it was all my fault. You know, nobody's to blame but me. And what I believed happened was I bent him down to give him an uppercut because I had to, you know, he's a lot taller than me, and I bent him down, and the mask just came off in my hand, and I you know, he was really mad, and I think he thought I did it on purpose, but I actually didn't. But you know, I mean, the way I was at the time, I don't blame anybody thinking that, you know, because I was in a bad state. But you know, that's what as far as I can remember, that's what happened.
Anything else, Adam?
I was wondering, what was it like to work with Antonio Inoki?
I really enjoyed it. I mean, I don't think anybody really understood what was happening at that time. That was another case where, I was told exactly what to do, so I went out and did what I was told to do. He told me what to do, so I went out and did it. He just told me to wrestle him and hit him hard, and that's what I did. The thing that, I came out and I thought, I don't think anybody had a clue what was going on, But Terry Funk was there at the time, and he said, just give me the thumbs up. He said, that's exactly what he wanted. He did a great job, So I was made up with that, That was all what I needed to hear, because I just did what I was told to do, and it did me well for quite a good run in Japan. It did, for a few years there. So I don't know. So I really enjoyed it.
How did you like? I remember when you were in Japan, they had you with Hashimoto a couple times, and you had. I remember one match. Just when I was talking to you, where you're both like drenched in sweat. I don't even know how long a match it was, but it just looked like. Like the 15th round of a boxing match, and you're throwing the forearms, and he's throwing the chops, and the sweat's flying everywhere. So I don't know if it was. I think it might have been in the summer or something, but maybe it wasn't. I just remember that just popped into my head, and I thought it was like a really great match.
Yeah, we had two championship matches, and they make everything so good over there. It was so special to me. Made it, you get in the ring and there's a Japanese flag and the Union Jack was flying, and, they play your national anthems, and, just make everything mean something, and it was really good, and we worked real well together, me and him. We just clicked, I seen working with other guys, and he wouldn't work with them, he just wouldn't sell the stuff, and he wouldn't do a lot of stuff, but me and him just seemed to click, and we really worked well together. And we had two real good ones, and we worked a lot of stuff that wasn't taped or anything, but the two were really good. I remember that one. That was the first one, I think, that you saw. I think it was in the middle of the summer. We were just absolutely drenched, like we beat the hell out of each other, for minute one of the match, and it was it's one of those matches where, it just built and built and built, and just a lot of false finishes, and, just kicking out on 2.5, and people really got with it. So, yeah, they were real good.
This is someone who's asking about what you think of Tony St. Clair, Johnny Smith, and we talked about Danny Collins, so Tony St. Clair and Johnny Smith.
Tony St. Clair was a great guy. I only ever met Johnny once. I was 17, and I went to a Dale Martin show in England trying to get a job. And he was just leaving to go to Calgary. I'm not sure if he'd been before, but, I know he was going back there. And I just turned 18. I was 18. I was 18. And he went the week after, and I got his jobs. They filled me into the jobs that he'd left behind. But I've spoke to him on the phone a couple of times. I've been with Chris Benoit, and he called him, and I've spoke to him a few times. I was watching him just recently on some All Japan tapes, and he works real hard, Any guys from England that get on, I love to see guys get on, because it's it's a hard place to come from. It's hard to get out of there and make a name for yourself elsewhere. And he's done a good job of it. Tony St. Clair was just tremendous. Still is, he's in his early 50s, and he still works, and he's still great. He was just, a class act.
What about Chris Adams?
Not a lot. Not much to say on that point. No, I don't class him as he's English, but I don't class him as an English wrestler. He doesn't wrestle English style. Doesn't do anything English style, He never did when he was in England. He certainly doesn't now, I don't.
We're pretty much running low on time right now. We get one more thing here. This is from Toby Tyler, who says, Could you let Steve Regal know that his addressing people as Sunshine was one of the highlights of a truly horrible year watching WCW, and that I hope you manage to sneak that line back into your promos when you get to the WWF?
I mean, that's something I call people anyway, you know. It's just a lot of English people call people Sunshine. It's just, you know, a thing that...
It was funny because I guess you were doing the program with Sting then,
yeah,
and some other people, and it was just it's like almost like from an American hearing a guy say that, it's almost like trying to say he's like effeminate or something, which is a heel I thought was pretty effective, because you're kind of like he's supposed to be a superstar and you're kind of acting like like you're you think you're going to beat him like a girl or something.
I remember that slap I gave him across the face. I remember that one promo, we sat in an office like signing a contract, and I had to backhand him round and rattled his face. It was brutal. It's one of those things when you've hit somebody and you go, I wish they hadn't done that hard. Yeah, I remember that. People seem to, that's another thing people remember. I haven't done that since I was 96. And yet, silly things like that, people react to me a lot when I see people at shows and I talk to a lot of people. They always bring that up, along with the infamous song.
The song, yeah. Brian, anything else before we let Steve go?
I just want to say Steve is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, and I just love watching. All the wrestling that you put into a match. You don't see a lot of top wrestlers or even anything nowadays, but you always snuck it in there, and it was awesome.
Yeah, I always like that little subtle stuff too. Where it's
the headlock, when the guy had him in the headlock, and he got out of it by stepping on the back of the leg and turning it into an armbar. Awesome.
Yeah, I always like that smooth. It's just like smooth stuff, and since it's stuff that you don't see in this country, yeah, it makes you the technical aspect of it. It's just something different, and I always enjoy it too.
Well, thank you. That's what makes me different. Otherwise, you've got to try and be different somehow. I can't fly around. There's not a lot of stuff I can do. But I learned all that stuff when I was younger, and I didn't really do a great deal of that as years got on. When I was in Europe, but when I came over here, I thought I've got to do something different. So, the more I've got with that stuff, the more I think of other stuff, and the more I think about doing stuff and changing it up. So, thanks for noticing a lot of that stuff. I think a lot of it sometimes I'm just doing it for my own amusement, but obviously people pay attention. That's good.
Real quick before you go, one last thing. Where did you come up with the name Steve Regal, or was it given to you?
It was given to me when I first got the job for Dale Martin's when I was 18. A guy, I'd had a different name every day for the 3 years previous, whatever they thought was the funniest name they could give me of the particular day. I was always like another match, on the posters and stuff. So they just gave me whatever name they needed. And a guy that I knew in England, he had an American wrestling magazine, and it was obviously the American Steve Regal. And he said, "There's a good name, Steve Regal." So he gave me that, and I just kept it. After a while, when you start traveling around and people get to know you by a certain name, I never changed it because. That's what people knew me as, and so I just kept it as that,
Okay, we got to take off right now. We're right at the deadline. I want to thank Steve and of course Brian for being here, and we'll be back here tomorrow at 6 with Eddie Guerrero.